Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Dave?
My name is Dave, great for recovering addict. I don't know, I pretty much start out on my hands and knees in the morning and ask God to get the guidance, put me where He needs me. I couldn't tell you the exact date it was sent to Anchor. But I've seen some people with hearts and houses, I've seen trucks pulling there and maybe some carpentry tools and stuff like that, and someone carrying a piece of sheetrock in and out. The first person I met, one of the first people, was Mr. Scott Rich. Can't exactly remember quite who the first folks were, but I got into the mix somehow. Mr. Scott asked me, what do you like to do? But I said I like to pass it my hands, and he started mentioning a few things. That one of them was taping sheetrock, and I have taping, and he goes, "Wait, back that up, because I got just a job for you, And lo and behold, before I know it, I was up there swinging a trowel and playing amongst the other fellows, and people were painting in there and getting the place ready. Anchor is it's a sanctuary for alcoholics and addicts. It's definitely a lifesaver. We have this invisible serial killer that wants us dead, and 24/7 I have to stay in conscious contact with a higher power. Get on the Anchor, you build it and they will come, and the place has really developed over years, and I can see. There's a man Joe down there that started that Saturday beginners meeting. The place is, it's the new addiction, God, my higher power, and that place saves a lot of lives, whether you know or not. And it's like, it's a place where alcoholics and addicts can really unwind. Like, I'm not going to tell the average person my real story to go real down deep, because they wouldn't understand unless you're an alcoholic and addict. You might look at us like, this is crazy. These people down there have passed away a few times and been revived. And, when the Anchor's a place to restart your life, because when you come in here, everything I thought was right was wrong, and wrong was right, and they turn that around. They kind of break it down and do the step work, and which from the Bible, like they rebuild your house. You don't start from the roof down, you start from the bottom up, and you got your clean house. You don't clean it from the outside in, you clean it from the inside out, and that's what the steps underneath. It's a very real spiritual cleansing of your soul, and when you do the step works, like they say, it works when you work it. It takes a few times around, and some people don't, like, them doors don't swing open all the time. A lot of people I know passed away from this disease, and good to see Humberto might be a new prospect for going downstairs. I'd love to have him down there and help get it. Get it started. So.
Thank you, Dave. So I'm going to ask you guys a question. I'll talk for a second, but I'll give you the question now that way you can think more about it. A simple one to begin. What's your favorite aspect of what happens at the Anchor? It might be simple, might be something more profound. But as you're thinking about that, each one of these individuals is a significant contributor to the life and the work of the Anchor. They mentioned maybe a couple things. But one of the things we prayed about at the beginning, and I felt like I heard at the very beginning, is that there are so many people who, so we had this idea that I shared last week, right? Like, let's go to Hull, let's do what we can to provide space for people to be in community. But what we said was that was our initial goal, was community. But then we thought through the lens of addiction and recovery. And we're not the biggest church of all time. And a big question at the beginning was, how are we're going to do this? Where are these people, going to come from? How are we possibly going to do it? And very early on, the message we felt like we received was, well, there are so many people who aren't a part of this yet, who will be. And that happened very quickly at the very beginning. Richie was there at the very beginning. There were a lot of others. We could and should talk about Joseph and all of these people that came along. Of course, Kurt and Emily and my dad at the very beginning did a lot of work. but it would not be what it is today if not for people in the community stepping up. And I can go down and talk about what each one of them does in different ways, right? Rich and all of his hands-on stuff, and if something breaks, he at least has a vision and works with Kurt, fights with Kurt, or whatever, however they work it out to figure out what's going to happen to that thing. And then Scott is the new addition to that. He briefly mentioned it, but when that water damage happened several Sundays, like 7, 8 weeks ago now, I don't even know. We were all here. I don't know if some of you were in the first service, and my phone was blowing up from Kurt texting me as I'm preaching. But they just stepped in. They knew what to do and got us. And now it's all fixed because Rich now has cleaned it all up. I don't even know who helped you. I should probably name other names. But there was a particular time, I won't say towards the end of COVID, but in the midst of COVID, where the groups had started and we just let them start because they had to happen, like Rich said. Like it just had to happen. But there was a lot of disorganization as that kind of half-thesis arise out of the grassroots, and Ann came along and just said, do you want me to help? Or in some ways she stepped in and did it, and then we had a meeting and she took over finances and helped get leaders for different groups, and plays a significant role in the background that really we're not supposed to do. I'm not going to go into the life of AA and how the groups work, but Ann just stepped up and did all that in the background. And Dave, I don't know how many of you know, so Dave lives downstairs here at the chapel, and we're slowly working towards a residential discipleship program here. There's been a lot of speed bumps and town stuff and things like that. But Dave is our house manager. And has already helped a couple of individuals in that scenario. But we're looking forward to continuing to develop that even more. And so when we first started, I'm like, where on earth, how are we going to do this? And God said, there will be people, and there are people. And these are just four very important individuals. There are many, many more. But I didn't know any of them before 2018, I can say. And that's just the way, a significant way of how it's kept going. So, what is your, what do they say, your favorite aspect of what happens at the anchor? Maybe you can't name one, but just name one. Anybody, just raise your hand and grab the mic. Anyone? Sure, Ann.
Hi, I'm Ann. I have so many favorite aspects of the anchor. But I think my favorite thing is when you start to see the lights in people's eyes turn back on. We have a saying called "meeting makers make it," and I was doing the math about the meetings that we must have had over the years, and it's over 2,100 meetings. The saying goes, more meetings, more chances, no meetings, no chances. So at the anchor, there are plenty of chances, and it's there. My first meeting was in 1999, but I was never able to put the spirituality connection together. So when I finally found the anchor, just something clicked. It was like this perfect trifecta of God, AA, and the anchor, and it was just something special. So I see that in people's eyes. The lights just start to turn on. They show up day after day after day, and their lives get better. It is just amazing. And if I think about it too much, I get emotional, but lives are changing, and I see it each and every day. So.
I gotta say one thing, Rich, I'll let you go, but if you're lucky enough to meet the anchor someday when Ann brings her dog, it's a beautiful, beautiful dog, but the dog's name is? Anchor. She named her dog Anchor. It's such a cool thing. But Rich, go ahead. So what's your favorite aspect of what happens at the anchor?
So I have a few of them, but the ones on the top of my head, if I wasn't at the anchor, I wouldn't be here. So that's a strong possibility I wouldn't be in this church. It would have nothing to do with the Scots, Kurt's family, or her, or maybe every one of us in these seats probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the anchor. So we needed something besides our recovery, so we have to go and incorporate church in our lives too, and so here we are. And another great thing, I look forward to going to my Friday night meeting every Friday. I say to my meetings, but I'm sure no one's right here, but I had a sponsor that had passed away. He was one of my first sponsors. Old age, great guy, been sober for a long, long time, and I asked him, when can I stop going to meetings? And I was right, and he said to put a mirror next to your bed and huff on it. If it doesn't fog up, you don't have to go. So I understood right then I'd be going for a while, you know, and that's the way you taught me. So I mean, that was another good thing. But Friday night meeting, my home group, I look forward to going a little early and getting the place spruced up. And you know, my meeting, that's my meeting, you know, along with a lot of other people. It's imperative I do that, so it's there for me. So that's another favorite part of the anchor for me. Thanks.
You know, this wasn't on the paper, the questions that I sent out, but can you help us, any of you, help us understand what it is like for someone to go to a meeting in the first place? I know it's for several people, there's a lot of first, you know, restarts and stuff like that. But a lot of us don't understand even how the system or the community of an anonymous group, or even what somebody's going through, what it's like. Can anyone want to describe that?
Yeah, I can explain because I got less time than everybody sitting there going into AA meetings, but walking into a meeting, especially going through recovery and everything, a lot of times it's your ego and your self-esteem, everything, you're at the bottom, you're at the end of the end. And everybody, and especially in the town hall, because it's so small, even then, but the town hall is so small, a lot of us, I've lived there all my life, Richie has, but there's a lot of us that know you, they know my family and stuff, and it wasn't like I wanted to go into it. And, but part of it is walking through the door and just the welcoming part of it, you know, it's kind of, you know, you gotta see it start, because you start to build your ego back up and everything, well, your self-esteem, I should say, and for people to walk through that door, it's hard. You know, but like I said, walking through there, people that have been there, like Ann, Richie, it's welcoming. And then I met Kurt, I met you, I met Mr. Scott and everything, and since the day I walked through the door, I mean, Richie said to me, because I latched on to Richie, he's my sponsor, but it's like, hey, he goes, we got a meeting on Wednesday nights, why don't you just come down, you know, it's just a group of guys or anything, you know, it's nothing, you know, it's just, hey, we read a book, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I walked in, and I mean, Mr. Scott was back and forth. He hadn't been there yet, and I hadn't met him. It was like 3 weeks into it when I finally met him, but because he was up in Vermont and stuff, and getting everything done with yes. But then I met you. But walking through those doors, I mean, it's just talking to people in a way that it's home. And people got to understand that to walk into a place and to feel comfortable being at and going through recovery.
How do people know? How do people know? One, that the anchor's there, or let's say the meeting, right? That the meeting is there. Like, give us the actual, because we don't know.
The meetings are in the book.
What's the book?
They have the AA book, right? They have the meeting book. We have an app
An app, yeah.
on the phone, and word of mouth with the anchor in the town hall. Everybody knows the anchor's there. I mean,
Can you put a breakdown maybe on how many percentage? Maybe not. If you can't, that's fine. But like in terms of how many are personally invited and how many just kind of find it on the app and. So there's an app that lists all the meetings in you can search by geographical area, and I think 3 of our meetings are on. I think noon, Friday, Saturday, or maybe there's more. There's more. Okay. And so people can do that, but is it more so the personal invitation?
No, it's word of mouth. I mean, a lot of us go to meetings all over the place.
Yep.
It's word of mouth. The anchor. I mean, people know the anchor now. I mean, it's because we have more because we have people coming in with doing commitments and stuff. You know, I'll use we can't forget about the young people's.
Yeah.
The young people's meeting is unbelievable. Those kids that are there, the group of them, 70 to 80 kids, and it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm
Saturday, right?
Saturday night.
Standing room only.
Right, and I mean, that's what I mean, but you see the amount of kids that are in recovery, I mean, I'm envious, and I mean, it's part of what we're supposed to do, but to get that, to grasp that at that point in time, and those kids, that community that they have, and the safety that they have in that building, to go what they're going through at that age, it's unbelievable. And I mean, I can't say any more about it, but unless anybody else wants to speak on it, we'll find out about it. I mean, a lot of us, because we're around, I mean, I'm in the city all the time, Richie's around, Ian's around.
But what I'm getting at is there's a community ethos that exists that is really like few other things in the world, right? So it might be that somebody is in the throes of it, right, at the worst moment, but some they know they have to do something, but they don't completely know how to do it, or they, like you said, don't want to do it because of a variety of feelings, shame, whatever else. But it's not, there's something that happens amongst one another, right? Where you notice and you know that look in someone's eye or what, on their face or even just, physical attributes to say, and you take it upon yourselves, right? Sometimes to anyone to say, hey, Susan or Tony, there's a meeting, 7 o'clock tonight, we're going. Rich, I know that's what you do. I know, I've seen you do that to somebody.
Like we're doing, like when we do commitments and stuff.
What's a commitment?
A commitment is where our group, the Friday night revival, we go out and we speak at other meetings, at other group meetings around the South Shore. We have people, we just had a group come up from Rhode Island. When we're doing commitments at Spectrum, which is a rehab, right?
In Weymouth, right?
In Weymouth.
Right by the Weymouth Police Station,
Right.
same road right
And
there.
we just started doing one over at Evoke, which used to be the old nursing home, the old Cohasset nursing
And
home.
you're driven right by the Hingham Cohasset line, Evoke is right there on 3A.
So, in the midst of that, Kurt's going with us, but we all have cards on us for the anchor. And a lot of people, when we say the anchor, a lot of these people that are in there, that in the past 2 months that we've been doing it, they know about the anchor. But we have cards with us because we've been telling them that we have the recovery coach going on there. So we hand out the cards anyways when we're out there. So we're passing it around that we've been going to that the anchor offers more than just AA. I understand that the AA is a major part of it, but the recovery part of it is we're trying to promote it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Let's talk about that. That's to the question about community. Did you want to say something? Yeah, okay. Then we'll come to community.
So you wanna talk about how we
Yeah, just, how do you see, like, specifically the idea of community happening at the anchor? I mean, like I'm using your transition there, Scotty, to go from like,
We always pass the word on that, there's a new time meeting. We kinda, try to attract people more than promote, attract them, that this is a safe place to go, this is how we did it. But you have to put a lot of stuff aside, the fears and the anxiety and the ego and stuff like that to walk through that door. That means you have the gifts of desperation to do something about your addiction or alcoholism. So there's a strong, that's a tough thing to do, to walk through that door without being total mess, never mind trying to stay sober, so that's the first step, and then you gotta make a connection, let's be honest, there's a lot of heartaches, a lot of headaches. Some people are not comfortable enough yet. That doesn't mean they're not ready, it just means they just can't take that first step to get involved in something like this. But we're there to try to make that easier, with a welcoming, warm heart, compassion. Be like, well, we're there for you. Much rather you call us than go to the package store or call somebody for drugs or alcohol. Much rather you call one of us. So our numbers are always flying around to give them that option, because that's how it happened for me, that's how it happened for everybody on the panel, that's what we did. We had to make a call with that 200-pound phone to somebody and say, I need help, just for a cup of coffee or a conversation or inviting to a meeting, which is relatively, the key to it all. It's have to be present, you have to be present. 90% of it, you have to get up and do something about it besides not. And that's the place to go. And we talk about every time we go to a commitment, which means someone comes to us and talks about their experience, strength, and hope, and then we go to them and talk about our experience, strength, and hope as a group. So we have a strong group. We have a strong group coming back since the pandemic now more than ever. So we at least have 4, 5, 6 people going on these commitments, no matter what. No matter if it's Wednesday at 8 o'clock, no matter when it is. It's not always convenient, but we do it because that's the way we stay sober. So anyways, when we do that, we also advertise ourselves by saying we're from the Friday night group, we meet at the Anchor, we're Friday Night Revival from 7 to 8, please come down, so we give that invitation out, never mind knowing that whoever we're talking to, besides the detoxes, they're gonna return visit us with a commitment, so we can hear their part, and so that's how it works. So if I go to Quincy and I do exactly what I'm doing right here with my fellow, my group members, I say that to them about the Anchor, and that means 30 or 40 of them just heard about the anchor, and 30 or 40 of them they talked to, and so there's how we spread the word that we're open, for meetings and stuff to help, and on top of that, a lot of people have new ideas which they'll bring to the table, and they want to start their own thing, which the anchor's welcome to that too, depending on what it possibly could be. But 9 out of 10, if it's something healthy and serves the community and helps addicts and alcoholics, the odds are good they're going to be doing that too.
There's, so we have our staff meeting every other week, and almost without exception now, when we come to staff meeting, one of the main things we have to talk about is what new group or idea really has been presented. Like almost every single staff meeting now, just right on the agenda. And you know what, some things haven't worked, some things haven't gone very long, but there's always somebody else ready to fill in the void. Finding a meeting time at the anchor is not easy these days, which is great. That's why it's there. But we've tried a lot of different things, that's history stuff at this point. One of the things at the very beginning, one of the things I anticipated, hoped for, there exists within the recovery world a certain structure and example of community that the church needs to learn from. A lot of us who've grown up in the church, we have a particular experience of maybe safety at home growing up, or even just being a part of the church, we have certain structures that we take for granted. And one of the things that I hope for getting into is that we would learn what community looks like. We call it koinonia, fellowship, in the church fellowship. Although that's a very familiar word in the recovery world. Fellowship is a familiar word. You go use it on the streets in general, people, fellowship, I think I know what that means. But people in community, in recovery, know what fellowship means. But also evangelism. Now, if you've been around my teaching and preaching long enough here, you know that I really boil down evangelism to what the Bible calls it. It's good news. It's good news. One lighthearted definition of evangelism is it's just one beggar telling another beggar where to find the bread. And I hear that so much in the recovery world. Listen, here's what I found. Here's how we can find it together again. In your life. I don't know what you think evangelism is. I don't even know if that word means anything to you guys, but it is evangelism. What's happening here? The good news of liberation and freedom and redemption. Maybe Christ's name isn't always attached to it. It doesn't matter. There's this, I'll read it at the end, but there's a parable Jesus tells, I think, that really speaks to this. But back on the community piece, because that was our original work, right? And that's, Kurt came rearing, it's like, Kurt shouldn't do the recovery world, but community was our main thing. And that's why, we delved into, yoga and drums and kids events now and then. And, before the pandemic, Saturday evening hangouts. I don't even know how much you guys know about our Saturday evening hangouts. And we would just come. Now that's been replaced by, the young people's meeting, which, by the way, you should totally go to and sneak into. It's hard for some of us who have colored hair on our faces now, or lighter hair, I have to say, on our faces now. But just experience it once. I'll tell you just I've only been maybe 2 or 3 times, I think, to young people's meeting, but man, it is revival in a certain kind of sense. Not, this isn't your 1960s, 70s, 80s holiness revival in that way, but it's certainly, when I was there, I felt a presence. As I heard people, a very different atmosphere, share how they've been delivered or are being delivered, even. The testimony I heard, the speaker that night, one of the nights I went, was a cop, which he didn't tell everybody till the very end, which was kind of cool. But man, he was preaching with words that you would kick me out of the sanctuary for. But it was a holiness message in terms of people being set apart from things that would destroy their lives, so they can live life in new and fresh ways. So anyone else more on community? I think Martine can answer one of these. How have you seen the space at the Anchor become a place of community for people? How is the Anchor different from other places maybe where people find community?
So I'll speak to that a little bit. And you use the word evangelization, and we promote ourselves in terms of attraction. We try to conduct our lives in a way that is true to our traditions and to our steps, in a way that would make people interested. You know, what's going on with you? How are you doing that? You know, how is your life changing? So when people come to share their experience, strength, and hope, there are no experts in AA. You know, there are no heads of AA, there are no presidents. We have this very unique organizational structure where the power lies in the group voice, the group conscience, which is super, super powerful.
And messy sometimes.
Very messy, but thank goodness for the minority opinion. No, but it is a structure in which we are able to value everyone's opinion and just listen. And that is attractive to people. By sharing your own experience, strength, and hope, you're not telling people how to do things. You're just telling how you did it. And I was told early on, you're supposed to identify, not compare. And I can find something in everybody's stories, even if it sounds or looks totally different than mine, that I can use to help in my own recovery. And I've been going to meetings since 1999, which was a really long time ago. So I've seen lots of different meetings, and they're all different places and all different kinds and all different fields. But there is something very truly special about the fellowship at the Anchor, because of being sober and finding life again. I woke up, I got a second chance. Let's be honest, it was probably like a third, fourth, or fifth chance, but I'm living life again, and I have the honor and privilege to work for our central services in Boston, which is an organizational structure that helps get information out about AA. So this is the organization that would list all the meetings, and we can provide list of meetings all over the world, to be quite honest. But there is something special about the Anchor meeting. So when you go and you show up, you've seen this on the computer, on an app, but when you show up, it's that feel, that unique feel that you get. It's that fellowship, it's that attraction. It makes you come back over and over and over again. And it's in the repetition, in the listening to everybody's stories, that people start to get better, and the lights shine in people's eyes, and it is something spectacular if you've never seen it. So
If all you know about recovery meetings you learned from Finding Nemo and the Shark Circle, that is all the reason to go. And then there's different meetings. We can help you know which meeting would be appropriate to go to, and not in mass, but a couple at a time, or one or two at a time, to see what really happens. And then it's not just stating your name 15 times to one another, but what actually you can't know unless you're sitting there and actually experiencing it.
It's still a community, right?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'm gonna go about the part about the community and the AA part. The AA part of this is it's not given as a God. It's somebody of your own choosing, who your higher power is and everything. But the thing about going down the Anchor is I was brought up Catholic. I was also Methodist with my mother and everything. My mother was Methodist Protestant, my father was Catholic. But I also grew up with a lot of Jewish people in town. And faith isn't thrown at everybody, but it's there. The thing about the Anchor is we have faith for any which way you want to look at. I mean, I talk with Richard, I talk with Mrs. Scott and everything during our discipleship. It's not pushed on us. We don't push it. And it makes people feel more comfortable. It's because and if they want to go through, we have the discipleship, we have the Bible study down there. It's there, and I mean, there's no one throwing it at anybody, and I mean, and it's a laid back feeling, but it's there. God, and I mean, I hated God for a long time, and when it came back, and I was given something, and I've said it to Mrs. Scott, tried to figure this out, said it to Richard, said it to everybody. I don't want him to try and figure it out. He's been there to protect me all my life and everything. I've never in the trouble that I could have gotten, in the trouble that I couldn't have. But the community down there is what the Anchor does. I mean, we do the stuff for the kids is unbelievable. I mean, they do the Santa Claus stuff. They do, they have the movie night. The stuff, the trunk or treat. I mean, the stuff that goes on down there all the time. But the Anchor community is everybody gets involved with that. Everybody that's going to these AA meetings or whatever they are, they all get involved with everything that for the kids and all that. And that's one big thing. But they're always there to help. That's the biggest thing that the Anchor's there for, the community to help. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's at a point where I can't explain it. I just traveled down to Florida and back, going to AA, and I went to a lot of AA meetings when I was down there and everything, but it wasn't home.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it. The Anchor is home. There's something about that room, when I'm in that room with the people that we're with, and I mean, we got people that come from Dorchester all day long and everything, we got people that from all over the South Shore that come to the Anchor to go to a meeting. And they'll say the same thing over and over again. There's something about that group of people that we get together with. And that room at the Anchor is unbelievable. It's just the, I don't know, I'm not gonna say, to me it's spiritual, because it's the aura that's around it. There's something about it that it's hard to explain, but it's the welcoming and you feel safe.
Anybody want to add any final word? I'm going to read something about it. Anybody want to say anything final? Oh, yeah.
Just one quick thing. There is a lot of stigma associated with addiction and alcoholism, and especially drug addiction too. So I think what I find most helpful is that the AA is an open, welcoming place. There is no shame. There are what I call them AA adjacent activities, like recovery-related activities, and it allows the community to be more accepting. And I can't imagine that there's not a single person in this room that is not touched by addiction in some way, whether it be themselves or someone in their family or someone at work. We all know someone who is struggling. And by talking about it, by allowing the conversation about education to happen and a conversation that there is a solution, and I think that's what the Anchor has been instrumental in my life, and I see it working in everybody every day. So thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, the four of you. One of the stories from the Bible that has helped Kurt and I along in the last several years is in Luke 17. You know, in the church, we tend, especially pastors, we tend to want to control everything, to see where everything's going, and to even reap the benefits of everything that happens. And this parable, I think, has helped Kurt and I know it's helped Kurt and I along the way. Maybe you'll hear it as I read it. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 men with skin diseases approached him. Keeping their distance from him, they raised their voices and said, "Jesus, Master, show us mercy." When Jesus saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." As they left, all 10 of them were cleansed. One of them, when he saw that he had been healed, returned and praised God with a loud voice. He fell on his face at Jesus' feet and thanked him. 10 people cleansed and healed, and one returns and kind of becomes part of Jesus' following. And you know, Jesus has some questions about that. You can keep reading. But the notion here is that our role in the church is to do what God has asked us to do in Luke 4:18 or 19, to be in the work of liberation and freedom of people groups of all sorts. And we've focused on recovery. We talk around here about incarceration, which isn't completely unrelated to some people's stories, at least. We can talk about any which way that people's lives are imprisoned by the things of life. I mean, we do have eating groups now at the Anchor, and there's all sorts of different ways that each of us, one way or another, has been imprisoned by things that would seek life out of us. Our hope in the church is to present good news, to scatter it wherever it might land. Some seed on rocks, some seed in good soil. It doesn't matter. Liberally. Our faith is that Christ died for every single person. And it's up to each person whether or not to receive that salvation that he provides. Sometimes in the church we've gotten so caught up in compartmentalizing and segmenting and saying this is the way it happens, and this is what people need to do, this is the prayer they need to pray, this is how they need to pray, where they need to pray it, and all of that. And some of that's been really, really good. And some of us are here because of that. And thanks be to God. But we've decided that in our church we're going to spread good news liberally. That means freely, right? To scatter it wherever, and some of it's going to take root, and a lot of it has. And so thanks be to God for that, and for all the different ways that people have stepped up pragmatically, financially, time-wise. I mean, the hours and hours that people put at the beginning and now all the way along, it just couldn't happen. And it certainly couldn't happen, you don't get to it, right, without the financial piece. And that's where we're culminating here in a couple of weeks. We'll say even more about that next week. But it takes a lot to keep a building open. The staff is critical. Every piece of it is critical, right? The volunteers and leaders, Kurt can't be there 24/7, or should he be there 24/7? Emily can't go. They're there a lot. They do a lot. They're in the background making sure things, as best we can, because it's messy sometimes, move along. When one group dies, or burns out, how do we fill that space? There's a lot of work, but it hasn't gotten any cheaper to do it. So.